Sarah's apartment was small but cozy, a sanctuary from the storms of her past. The early morning sun filtered through the thin curtains, casting a soft glow over the modest living room. She moved quietly, not wanting to wake her 3-year-old son Noah, who slept peacefully in his crib. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air as Sarah prepared breakfast. She glanced at the clock, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. "Morning, buddy," she whispered, as Noah stirred, rubbing his eyes with tiny fists. He looked up at her with a sleepy smile, melting her heart as he did every morning. "Mommy," he exclaimed, reaching out his arms. Sarah scooped him up, kissing his soft cheek. "Are you ready for some breakfast?" she asked, her voice gentle. Noah nodded eagerly. "Pancakes." "Pancakes it is," she replied, setting him down in his high chair. As she mixed the batter, her thoughts drifted to the pendant around her neck, a delicate piece with a small, intricate design, a keepsake from her late mother. She touched it lightly, drawing strength from the memory of her mother's resilience. "Mummy, play?" Noah's voice brought her back to the present. "After breakfast, sweetheart," Sarah said, smiling at him. "We have to get you ready for daycare." They ate breakfast together, Noah chattering about his favorite toys and the new friends he had made at daycare. Sarah listened, her heart swelling with love and pride. As she dressed Noah in his little jacket, she noticed a smudge on his cheek. "Hold still, buddy," she said, wiping it away with a damp cloth. "There, all clean." Noah giggled, squirming in her hands. "Mommy, tickles!" Sarah laughed softly, a sound that seemed to surprise even herself. It had been a long time since she felt genuine joy. "We don't want you going to daycare with a dirty face, do we?" "No," Noah agreed, his eyes bright with mischief. With Noah ready, Sarah quickly finished getting dressed. She chose a simple blouse and slacks, wanting to look professional but comfortable. The pendant lay cool against her skin, a constant reminder of her purpose. "All right, let's go," she said, taking Noah's hand. As they walked to the daycare, Sarah's mind was already at work, the anxiety gnawing at her. The company had been hinting at layoffs for weeks, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her job might be in jeopardy. She couldn't afford to lose it, not with all the bills, and the need to secure a future for Noah. "Be a good boy, okay?" she said, kneeling to kiss Noah goodbye at the daycare entrance. "I will, Mommy," he promised, giving her a tight hug before running off to join his friends. Sarah watched him for a moment, her heart aching with a mixture of love and worry. "I love you," she whispered, more to herself than to him. The walk to her office was short, but felt longer with the weight of her thoughts. As she entered the building, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever the day might bring. "Good morning, Sarah," a co-worker greeted her. "Morning," she replied, forcing a smile. The office was bustling with activity, but there was an undercurrent of tension that everyone felt. "Did you hear about the meeting later?" another colleague asked, eyes wide with concern. Sarah nodded, her stomach churning. "Yeah, I did. Any idea what it's about?" "No clue," came the reply, the uncertainty only adding to her anxiety. Sarah settled at her desk, trying to focus on the tasks at hand. But her mind kept drifting back to Noah and the fragile balance she was trying to maintain. She reached up to touch the pendant again, drawing comfort from its presence. The memories came flooding back, unbidden and painful, pulling her into a past she had worked hard to escape. It was 3 years ago, in a different apartment. The walls there seemed to close in on her every day, the space filled with an oppressive tension. Mark, her ex-husband, had been charming at first, But it wasn't long before his true nature revealed itself. His charm turned to control and his love to violence. "Noah, come here, sweetie," Sarah called, trying to keep her voice steady as she lifted her son onto her hip. Noah was barely a year old then, his eyes wide and innocent, oblivious to the turmoil around him. She had to protect him, no matter what. The arguments were frequent, their voices rising and falling like a storm. "Why do you always have to be like this, Mark?" she had demanded one night, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and defiance. "Why can't you just let me live?" Mark's response was predictable, a sneer curling his lips. "Live? What do you know about living, Sarah? You're nothing without me. Nothing." His words cut deep, but Sarah had learned to brace herself against them. "I'm not nothing, and I won't let you treat me like this, not anymore." Mark's face darkened, his eyes narrowing into slits. "You think you can talk to me like that, after everything I've done for you?" "What have you done, Mark? Controlled me? Hurt me? I can't live like this, and I won't let Noah grow up in this environment." The tension in the room was palpable, Mark's anger radiating like heat. He took a step forward, and Sarah instinctively stepped back, clutching Noah tighter. "You think you're so brave," he spat. "But you're weak. You'll always come crawling back to me." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground. "I won't. Not this time." Her voice was steady, despite the fear coursing through her veins. That night had been the breaking point, the culmination of years of abuse and control. Mark had come home drunk, his anger more volatile than ever. He had thrown things, screamed obscenities, and finally turned his rage on her. She had shielded Noah with her body, taking the blows meant for him. In that moment, something inside her snapped. "I'm leaving, Mark," she had said, her voice a mere whisper but filled with an ironclad resolve. "And I'm taking Noah with me." Mark had laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "You? Leave! You don't have the guts!" But she did. That night, after Mark had passed out in a drunken stupor, Sarah packed a bag with trembling hands. She gathered a few clothes, Noah's favorite toys, and the precious pendant her mother had left her. Every moment was filled with terror, but she pushed through it, her love for Noah giving her strength. "Noah, we're going on an adventure," she had whispered to her son, trying to keep her voice light. He looked up at her with wide eyes, sensing the gravity of the situation, even if he didn't understand it. They slipped out into the night, the darkness wrapping around them like a shroud. Sarah's heart raced with each step, every shadow a potential threat. She didn't know where they were going, only that they had to get away. The women's shelter was a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the dark. She had arrived there breathless and shaking, but resolute. "Please, help us," she had pleaded with the staff. "We need a safe place." The shelter staff had welcomed her with open arms, providing safety and support. It was there that she began to rebuild her life, piece by piece. She started the divorce process, secured custody of Noah, and slowly began to heal. Now, standing in her office, those memories felt like a lifetime ago, but they were never far from her mind. They fueled her determination, her resolve to create a better life for Noah. "Sarah, are you okay?" Her colleague's voice snapped her back to the present. "Yeah, just thinking," she replied, forcing a smile. "Good morning, Sarah," her colleague Lisa said, her voice strained. "Did you hear the news?" "What news?" Sarah asked, a sinking feeling already starting to form. "Morning meeting in 10 minutes. Everyone's talking about layoffs," Lisa replied, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Layoffs. The word echoed in her mind, amplifying her anxiety. She had fought so hard to build a stable life for herself and Noah. Losing her job was not an option. The meeting room was filled with a subdued energy as everyone gathered. The usual chatter was replaced by anxious murmurs. Sarah found a seat towards the back, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Their boss, Mr. Thompson, entered the room, his face a mask of regret. He cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. "I won't beat around the bush. Due to the company's poor performance, we've decided to dissolve the biotechnology division. This means that, unfortunately, we will have to lay off a significant number of employees." A collective gasp filled the room. Sarah felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Her colleagues exchanged worried glances, and the air was thick with tension. "Please understand, this decision was not made lightly," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice heavy. "We will provide severance packages and assistance in finding new employment. We value each and every one of you, and we're deeply sorry for this outcome." The meeting ended with a sense of finality that left everyone reeling. As they dispersed, Sarah felt a growing sense of dread. How was she going to support Noah? What if she couldn't find another job in time? Back at her desk, Sarah tried to focus, but her mind was in turmoil. She glanced at her computer screen, the blinking cursor mocking her inability to take action. She needed to do something, anything to regain control. "Hey, Sarah," Lisa's voice broke through her thoughts. "I can't believe this is happening. What are we going to do?" Sarah looked at her friend, seeing her own fear reflected in Lisa's eyes. "I don't know, Lisa, but we have to start looking for new jobs. We can't afford to wait." The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and online job searches. Sarah's mind buzzed with anxiety as she sent out resumes, each rejection or non-response chipping away at her hope. When she finally got home, Noah's cheerful greeting was a stark contrast to her mood. "Mommy, I made a picture for you," he exclaimed, holding up a crayon drawing. "That's beautiful, Noah," she said, forcing a smile. "Let's put it on the fridge." As they went through their evening routine, Sarah's mind was elsewhere. The weight of her responsibilities pressed down on her, and she struggled to keep her fear at bay. After Noah was tucked into bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her. She scrolled through job listings, the words blurring together. She felt a pang of despair, but she couldn't afford to give in to it. "Why is this happening?" she muttered to herself, rubbing her temples. "What am I going to do?" One evening, after another fruitless day of job hunting, Sarah sat down with Noah for dinner. "Mummy, why are you so sad?" he asked, his innocent eyes full of concern. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Mummy's just worried about work, sweetheart, but I promise everything will be okay." "Are we going to be okay?" Noah asked, his voice trembling slightly. Sarah reached across the table, taking his small hand in hers. "Yes, we will. I'm going to make sure of it." The final week at the biotechnology company was filled with goodbyes and uncertainty. Sarah packed up her desk, each item a reminder of the life she had built here. On her last day, Mr. Thompson called her into his office. "Sarah, I know this is difficult. You've been an invaluable part of this team. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I appreciate everything. I just need to find something stable for Noah and me." Mr. Thompson nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'll keep an ear out for any opportunities. You're strong, Sarah. You'll get through this." Walking out of the building for the last time, Sarah felt a mix of emotions: fear, sadness, but also a glimmer of hope. She had faced worse before and emerged stronger. This was just another challenge, and she was ready to tackle it head-on. Sarah walked out of yet another interview, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The rejection had been harsh, but unsurprising. The interviewer, a stern-faced woman, had bluntly stated, "We need someone fully committed. Being a single mother might compromise your dedication to the job." The words stung, leaving Sarah feeling both angry and helpless. She had expected prejudice, but facing it so directly was a blow to her already fragile morale. As she wandered aimlessly through the city, her feet led her to a place she hadn't visited in years, a local art gallery hosting an exhibition. She hesitated at the entrance, her fingers grazing the cool metal of the pendant around her neck. Art had once been her passion, a dream she had long set aside in the wake of life's harsh realities. With a sigh, she stepped inside, seeking solace in the familiarity of the paintings. The gallery fills with soft murmur of art enthusiasts, lost in their observations. Sarah moved slowly, her eyes tracing the brushstrokes on each canvas, her mind momentarily distracted from her worries. She stopped in front of a particularly striking piece, a vivid landscape that seemed to pulse with life. "What do you think of it?" a voice asked beside her. She turned to see a man, perhaps in his mid-40s, with an air of curiosity and warmth about him. "It's powerful," Sarah replied, choosing her words carefully. "The colors are bold, almost aggressive, yet there's a harmony in the chaos. It feels alive, like the artist captured a moment of pure emotion." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "You have quite an eye for art. Most people just see pretty colors and shapes." Sarah smiled faintly. "I used to study art. It was my passion before life took over." He nodded, sensing the weight behind her words. "I'm David, by the way." "And you are?" "Sarah," she said, shaking his outstretched hand. "Nice to meet you." "Likewise," David replied. "What brings you here today, Sarah, if you don't mind me asking?" Sarah hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I just came from a job interview. It didn't go well. I needed to clear my head." David's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that. What kind of job are you looking for?" "Anything, really. I just need something stable for my son and me, but it's hard. People see single mother and think unreliable." David frowned. "That's unfair. Being a parent should be seen as a strength, not a liability." Sarah nodded, appreciating his understanding. "What about you? What do you do?" "I'm actually in town for a business exhibition," David explained. "Our company is looking to hire mid-career professionals for a new project. Your insights on art tell me you're perceptive and thoughtful, qualities we value highly." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," David said with a smile. "Why don't you come by the exhibition hall tomorrow? We'll be holding an entrance exam for potential hires. I'd love to see what you can bring to the table." Hope flared in Sarah's chest, tempered by a healthy dose of skepticism. "I appreciate the offer, but why me?" "We just met," David shrugged. "Sometimes you meet people and just know they have something special. Besides, what have you got to lose?" He was right. Sarah had nothing to lose and everything to gain. She took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of optimism. "All right, I'll be there." The next day, Sarah walked into the bustling exhibition hall, feeling out of place among the confident professionals milling about. She spotted David near the entrance and made her way over. "Sarah, glad you could make it," he greeted her warmly. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," she admitted, "but ready." "Good," David said. "Follow me. We'll get you started with the entrance exam." The exam was challenging, designed to test not only technical skills, but also problem-solving and creativity. Sarah poured her heart into it, drawing on every bit of knowledge and experience she had. As she worked, she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. Hours later, she handed in her completed exam, exhausted but hopeful. David approached her, a thoughtful look on his face. "How do you think you did?" "I gave it my best shot," Sarah replied honestly. "I guess we'll see." David nodded. "That's all anyone can ask for. We'll review the results and get back to you soon." Days turned into an agonizing wait, each moment filled with a mix of hope and dread. Sarah tried to keep herself busy, focusing on Noah and their daily routines, but the uncertainty weighed heavily on her. Finally, the call came. David's voice on the other end was calm and reassuring. "Sarah, we've reviewed your exam. I'm pleased to tell you that we'd like to offer an interview." Tears of relief filled her eyes. "Thank you, David. You have no idea what this means to me." "I think I do," he replied. "See you in Monday, Sarah. We're excited to have you." Hanging up the phone, Sarah felt a surge of emotions: joy, relief, and a renewed sense of purpose. She had faced so many obstacles, but this was a new beginning. She picked up Noah, twirling him around as he giggled. "Mommy got an interview for my dream job, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." Noah's laughter was the sweetest sound she had ever heard. The morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Sarah's modest apartment, casting a warm glow over the room. She sat at the small kitchen table, a pile of documents spread out before her. The air was thick with a mix of hope and anxiety, her heart pounding in her chest. Tomorrow was the big day, the interview that could change everything. "Noah, come here for a second," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. Her son toddled over, his bright eyes full of curiosity. "Mommy, what are you doing?" he asked, climbing onto her lap. Sarah smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I'm getting ready for an important interview, sweetie. If I get this job, it'll help us a lot." "Are we going to be rich?" Noah asked, his face lighting up with excitement. "Not rich, but it will make things easier for us," Sarah replied, a hint of sadness in her voice. She wanted to give him the world, but for now, stability would have to suffice. Noah nodded, his expression serious. "I want you to get it, Mommy." "Me too, sweetheart," she whispered, hugging him tightly. The day passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah reviewed her resume and practiced answers to potential interview questions. She rehearsed in front of the mirror, critiquing her posture and tone. Each repetition built her confidence, but the underlying anxiety remained. "Why do you want to work here?" she asked her reflection, trying to sound calm and composed. "Because this company values creativity and innovation, and I believe my skills and experiences align perfectly with your mission," she answered herself, her voice firm. As evening fell, Sarah and Noah sat down for dinner. The simple meal was punctuated with their usual chatter, but Sarah's mind was elsewhere. "Mommy, will you tell me a story tonight?" Noah asked, his eyes full of hope. "Of course," Sarah said, her smile genuine despite the swirling thoughts in her mind. "But first, we need to talk about something important." Noah looked up at her, his face serious as he mimicked her tone. "Okay, Mommy." "Tomorrow is a big day for me," she began, choosing her words carefully. "I have an important interview that could help us a lot. I need you to be your best, okay? I might need to practice some more tonight, and I need you to be a good boy and go to bed on time." Noah nodded vigorously. "I'll be good, Mommy. I promise." Sarah felt a wave of gratitude for her little boy. Despite his young age, he always seemed to understand when she needed support. "Thank you, Noah. That means a lot to me." After dinner, Sarah tucked Noah into bed, reading him a story about brave knights and their adventures. As he drifted off to sleep, she felt a mix of pride and determination. She had to do this for him. Back in the living room, she laid out her interview outfit. Simple, professional, but with a touch of personal flair. She chose a blouse that matched the pendant she wore every day, a small but significant piece of her mother. It was a symbol of strength, a reminder of where she came from and who she was fighting for. "Okay, Sarah," she muttered to herself, taking a deep breath. "You've got this." She spent the next few hours going over her documents, double-checking every detail. The repetitive work calmed her nerves somewhat, but the weight of the interview loomed large in her mind. She knew how much was riding on this opportunity. As she prepared to go to bed, she couldn't shake the nerves. She walked into Noah's room, watching him sleep for a moment. His peaceful expression gave her a sense of calm. "I'm doing this for you," she whispered, kissing his forehead. The next morning, Sarah woke early, her stomach tight with anxiety. She went through her morning routine with precision, trying to keep herself grounded. She chose her outfit carefully, checking her reflection multiple times. "Noah, are you ready for daycare?" she called, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, Mommy," he replied, running up to her. He paused, looking up at her with wide eyes. "You look pretty, Mommy." "Thank you, Noah," she said, her heart swelling. "Let's go then." As they walked to the daycare, Sarah held Noah's hand tightly. She dropped him off with a quick hug and a kiss, then headed towards the bus stop. Her mind raced with thoughts of the interview, the questions she might face, and the impression she needed to make. Sarah stood outside the imposing glass doors of the company's headquarters, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. This was the final interview, the one that could change everything. She adjusted her blouse, ensuring the pendant her mother had left her was visible, but not ostentatious. It was a small piece of her past, a source of strength she carried with her. As she stepped inside, the cool, modern interior of the building seemed both welcoming and intimidating. She approached the reception desk, giving her name. The receptionist nodded and directed her to the waiting area. "Ms. Miller, you can go in now," the receptionist called after what felt like an eternity. Sarah stood up, smoothing her skirt nervously. She walked towards the interview room, her mind racing with thoughts and possible questions. When she entered, she recognized one of the interviewers from the exhibition, David, the man who had encouraged her to apply. He smiled warmly, giving her a nod of encouragement. "Good morning, Sarah," he greeted, extending a hand. "Good morning," Sarah replied, shaking his hand. She turned to the other interviewer, a woman with sharp eyes but a kind demeanor. "Please have a seat," the woman said. "I'm Janet, and you've already met David." Sarah nodded, sitting down and placing her portfolio on the table. She clasped her hands in her lap to stop them from trembling. "We've reviewed your initial interview and your application," Janet began, her voice calm and professional. "We'd like to ask you a few more questions to understand your qualifications and how you'd fit into our team." Sarah took a deep breath. "Of course. I'm ready." The questions started, each one probing her experience, her skills, and her ability to handle pressure. Sarah answered them as confidently as she could, drawing on her years of experience and her recent preparation. David and Janet took notes, their expressions giving little away. After what felt like hours, Janet leaned back, glancing at David. Sarah, you mentioned in your previous interview that you faced significant challenges in your life. Can you tell us more about a specific instance and how you dealt with it? Sarah hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. A few years ago, I was in a very difficult and abusive relationship. I had to make the decision to leave for the safety of my son and myself. It was incredibly challenging, but it taught me resilience and the importance of taking control of my own life. Janet's expression softened. That must have been very difficult. Thank you for sharing that with us. David cleared his throat, looking at her intently. Sarah, what drives you? What makes you push through these challenges? Sarah thought for a moment. My son, Noah. Everything I do is for him. I want to provide a stable and happy life for him, and that means pushing through whatever obstacles come my way. David nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. That's a strong motivator. We appreciate your honesty and resilience. As the interview neared its conclusion, Janet's eyes fell on Sarah's pendant. That's a beautiful pendant. Is there a story behind it? Sarah's fingers instinctively reached for the small charm. It belonged to my mother. She was a nurse, and she wore this every day. It's a reminder of her strength and the love she had. Janet's eyes widened slightly. Your mother was Susan Miller. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Yes. Do you know her? Janet smiled warmly. I knew Susan many years ago. She was an incredible woman. She helped me during a difficult time in my life. I wouldn't be where I am today without her kindness and support. Sarah felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She never talked much about her past. It means a lot to hear that she made a difference in your life. Janet nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. She did. And it's clear that her strength and kindness have passed on to you. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the shared connection settling over them. David cleared his throat, breaking the moment. Well, Sarah, thank you for coming in today. We'll be in touch very soon with our decision. Sarah stood, shaking their hands once more. Thank you for the opportunity. As she left the building, she felt a mix of emotions, nervousness, hope, and a surprising sense of connection. She had shared a part of herself she rarely revealed, and it had been met with understanding and respect. Back at home, Sarah went through the motions of her evening routine, her mind replaying the interview over and over. Noah sensed her unease and tried to cheer her up with his usual antics. She smiled, appreciating his efforts. Mommy, did you get the job? He asked innocently. I don't know yet, sweetie, she replied, hugging him tightly. But I think it went well. Noah looked up at her with trusting eyes. I believe in you, Mommy. You're the best. The days that followed were filled with a tense anticipation. Every phone call made her heart race, every email notification a potential life changer. Finally, the call came. Hello, this is Janet from the interview, the voice on the other end said. We'd like to offer you the position. Sarah felt a rush of relief and joy. Thank you so much. This means the world to me. Your resilience and determination impressed us. We're excited to have you on board, Janet said warmly. As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes. She picked up Noah, twirling him around as he laughed in delight. Mommy got the job, Noah. We're going to be okay. In that moment, she knew they were on the path to a brighter future. The struggles were far from over, but together they could face anything. One evening, as Sarah was settling Noah into bed, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from Janet. Would it be possible to meet at your place tomorrow evening? I'd like to share something important with you. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She quickly replied, "Of course. I'll be home after 6 p.m. The following day passed in a blur. Sarah managed to juggle her new job responsibilities with her usual routines, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the impending visit from Janet. What could be so important? As the clock struck 6, there was a knock on the door. Sarah took a deep breath and opened it to find Janet standing there, holding a small, worn box. "Good evening, Sarah," Janet greeted, a warm smile on her face. "Thank you for having me." "Please, come in," Sarah replied, stepping aside to let Janet enter. She led her to the living room where they both took a seat. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Janet set the box down on the coffee table and looked at Sarah with a thoughtful expression. "I wanted to share with you the story of how your mother changed my life," she began. Sarah's heart raced with anticipation. "I'd love to hear it." Janet took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Many years ago, I was in a very dark place. My children had abandoned me, and I found myself in the hospital utterly alone and without hope. Your mother, Susan, was a nurse there." Sarah felt a surge of surprise and pride. Her mother had always been compassionate and caring, but she had never spoken much about her work. Janet continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I was at my lowest point, ready to give up on everything. But Susan refused to let me sink into despair. She took care of me not just as a patient, but as a person. She listened to my story, offered comfort, and encouraged me to rebuild my life." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "That sounds like my mum," she said softly. "She always knew how to help people." Janet nodded, her eyes moistening. "She did more than that. She inspired me. Susan told me that even when we feel most abandoned, we have the strength within us to rise again. She helped me see that my life was worth fighting for. With her encouragement, I found the courage to get back on my feet." Taking a deep breath, Janet continued, "I started over. I found a job at a small gallery and worked my way up. I never forgot Susan's words or her kindness. Today, I'm the director of the gallery." Janet smiled, reaching for the small box on the table. "I brought something for you," she said, opening it to reveal a delicate, hand-crafted pendant. "This was a gift your mother gave me when I left the hospital. She said it was a symbol of new beginnings." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she took the pendant, feeling its weight in her hand. "Thank you, Janet. This means so much to me." Janet placed a hand on Sarah's. "I owe your mother everything. She saved my life, and in turn, I've tried to carry forward her legacy of kindness and compassion." Sarah felt a deep connection to her mother in that moment, a bond strengthened by the knowledge of her mother's impact on others. "I'm so proud to be her daughter," she said, her voice trembling. Janet smiled warmly. "And she would be incredibly proud of you, Sarah. You have her strength and her heart." The room was silent for a moment, filled with the weight of shared memories and gratitude. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice steady. "Thank you for sharing this with me, Janet. It gives me a new perspective on my mother and on myself." Janet nodded. "I'm glad. And I want you to know that you're not alone. You have people who care about you and believe in you." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you. That means a lot." As Janet prepared to leave, she turned back to Sarah with a final thought. "Remember, Sarah, you have the same power to inspire and uplift others, just like your mother did. Never forget that." After Janet left, Sarah sat alone in the quiet of her apartment, the pendant resting in her hand. She thought about her mother's legacy and the ways it had shaped her own life. The revelation about Janet's past had given her a renewed sense of purpose and connection. Into bed, she felt a deep sense of peace. "Mommy, you look happy," Noah observed, his eyes filled with innocent curiosity. Sarah smiled, brushing a hand through his hair. "I am, Noah. I learned something very special about Grandma tonight. She was an amazing person who helped a lot of people." Noah nodded, content with the explanation. "Just like you, Mummy." Sarah's heart swelled with pride and love. "Thank you, Noah. That's the best compliment I could ever get." As she lay in bed, Sarah reflected on the day's events. The connection with Janet, the stories of her mother's compassion, and the realization of her own strength filled her with a sense of calm and determination. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she had the legacy of her mother and the love of her son to guide her. Sarah's first day at the new job felt like the dawn of a new era. The sleek office environment was a stark contrast to her previous workplace, and she was determined to make a strong impression. Walking through the hallways, she felt a sense of belonging that she hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if she had been destined for this place. "Sarah, welcome aboard." David greeted her with a warm smile as she arrived. "How are you feeling today?" "Nervous but excited," Sarah replied, returning his smile. "Thank you for believing in me." "You've got this," David said, his confidence in her unwavering. "Let me show you around and introduce you to the team." As the weeks passed, Sarah settled into her role seamlessly. Her colleagues were welcoming, and she quickly established herself as a valuable member of the team. The work was challenging but rewarding, and every day she felt more confident and fulfilled. One afternoon, David approached her desk. "Sarah, do you have a moment?" "Sure," she said, looking up from her computer. "What's up?" "I was wondering if you'd like to join me for lunch," David suggested. "I know a great place nearby." "That sounds nice," Sarah agreed, appreciating the gesture. They had grown closer over the weeks, their professional rapport blossoming into a genuine friendship. Over lunch, they talked about everything from work to their personal lives. Sarah found herself opening up to David in a way she hadn't with anyone else in a long time. His presence was comforting, his interest in her life genuine. "You're really passionate about what you do," David observed. "It's inspiring." "Thank you," Sarah replied, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I feel like I've finally found my place here." As they continued to meet for lunch and spend more time together, their bond deepened. David's kindness and support were a constant in Sarah's life, and she found herself looking forward to their interactions. One evening, as she was leaving the office, David caught up with her. "Sarah, I've been thinking, would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Outside of work, I mean." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "I'd like that," she said, smiling. Their first dinner date was the beginning of something beautiful. They laughed, shared stories, and discovered a mutual respect and admiration for each other. As their relationship blossomed, it became clear that what they had was special. One Saturday morning, Sarah was at home with Noah, enjoying a rare moment of leisure. There was a knock at the door, and she opened it to find David standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers. "David, what's this?" Sarah asked, surprised. "Good morning, Sarah," David said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Can I come in?" "Of course," Sarah said, stepping aside. Noah ran up to David, his face lighting up with joy. "David, look what I made," Noah exclaimed, holding up a drawing. "That's amazing, Noah," David said, kneeling down to admire the artwork. "You're quite the artist." Sarah watched them, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. "What's going on, David?" David stood up, taking her hands in his. "Sarah, these past months have been incredible. You've brought so much joy and meaning into my life. I love you, and I can't imagine my future without you." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she realized what was happening. "David." Before she could say more, David got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. "Sarah, will you marry me?" Noah clapped his hands in excitement. "Say yes, Mommy." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Yes, David, yes, I will." The room filled with joy as David slipped the ring onto her finger. Noah danced around them, his happiness infectious. It was a moment of pure bliss, a culmination of all the love and support that had brought them together. As the wedding day approached, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Janet had become a mother figure to her, offering wisdom and guidance. When Sarah asked Janet to walk her down the aisle, she was deeply moved. "I would be honored, Janet," Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've been like a mother to me." Janet smiled, her eyes glistening. "And you've been like a daughter to me. I'm so proud of you, Sarah." The wedding was a beautiful, intimate ceremony. As Sarah walked down the aisle, her heart pounded with a mix of joy and gratitude. David stood at the altar, his eyes shining with love and anticipation. When they reached the altar, Janet kissed Sarah on the cheek and handed her over to David. "Take good care of her," Janet said, her voice choked with emotion. "I will," David promised, his eyes never leaving Sarah's. As they exchanged vows, Sarah felt the weight of her journey lift from her shoulders. She looked at David, the man who'd brought light back into her life, and knew that this was where she was meant to be. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. "You may kiss the bride." David leaned in, and their kiss was a promise of a future filled with love, support, and endless possibilities. Later, as they celebrated with friends and family, Sarah took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. She thought of her mother, the angels who had guided her through the darkest times, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Mum," she whispered, looking up at the sky, "for sending me these angels." Noah ran up to her, his face glowing with happiness. "Mommy, are you happy?" "Yes, Noah," Sarah said, lifting him into her arms. "I'm very happy." As the music played and the celebration continued, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. She was surrounded by love, supported by family, and ready to embrace the future. With David by her side and Noah in her arms, she knew that she could face anything that came their way. In that moment, everything felt like destiny.